Hey, I'm Peter Rahbar. Welcome to Across the Bar. How you doing, Laura?
I'm good, Peter. Welcome back from your vacation.
Yeah, it was great to be away. Did anything happen in this country while I was in Portugal?
Quiet in the news these days. All right, let's get into it. So, you were in Portugal on vacation. What did people say? Did you say you were an American or did you say you were in New York?
I usually lead with the New York reference, but people are just like, wow, it's really crazy over there. That's usually the reaction.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss, by the way, about the Knicks.
They were upset, so they lost when I came back.
Okay, so there's so much to talk about because we're joking, but obviously the White House and Washington and the world keeps on churning new exciting things right now that we need to talk about. One thing really bums me out. I love remote work. I obviously had never done remote work pre-pandemic, and now I gotta admit, it's dreamy. I can see why you should go into the office maybe 2 days a week if you're building a team. Young people need to learn. But personally, I'm so productive here in my apartment with my cat. But we're reading all these articles that people are making employees come back. There's no place for people to sit. What's going on?
There's a lot going on. Companies are definitely, ramping up the return to office policies and forcing people back in. And we're seeing a lot of like quirky things. I mean, as you mentioned, in some companies, there's just not enough office space, which is comical. Really good planning there, including some very prominent.
A lot of places with hoteling apps where like you have to like reserve a desk, which if there is a locker or a cubby, that can be fine. But when I worked at places where you're supposed to be there every day, but you don't have any place to leave anything, as a woman, it's really, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's impersonal, and we're talking about a place where you want employees to spend a lot of time. So why would you take steps to make it less personal and less welcoming? A few years ago when employers were trying to get employees to come back, they were actually taking additional steps, hiring hospitality consultants, doing things, redesigning their offices to make them more welcoming.
Food, massages, and now they're like, come back. You don't have any place to sit.
Right.
Stop your whining.
Right. So there's that. And then there's also, employee behavior. When you take people who are used to working at home by themselves, I won't say like you, I'll say like others. They come back and, they're used.
Weird.
Yeah, they come back all weird. My advice to companies, if you're bringing back employees who have been on their own or at home, remote, wherever, have some sessions when they come back, just like team building type sessions that help them understand the rules of the workplace and how to get along with people during business hours.
Also, I don't think we can assume that we have a common understanding on appropriate workplace behavior. And I think if you are a leader of a workplace that's bringing people back, you need to actually put out, like, this is how we act in this office. You can't just assume anymore because people have never been in an office before. They may not know not to take off their shoes or not to drink at their desk, or these are all things I've seen in the workplace, or like they just might not have any clue. Do you agree that you have to lay it out so people know what they're trying to emulate, I think, at this point, because there is no common frame of reference.
Right. And with so many generations in the workplace, it's really important to set the rules for the workplace. As an employer, you have a right to do that and communicate them to your employees. And with different generations, they have different conceptions and different places they're reaching to find these rules. I mean, the younger generations are looking at TikTok to figure out how to behave at the workplace. And maybe that doesn't comply with what you want. Take the opportunity to educate your workers. There's nothing wrong with that.
Are you allowed to have rules in your workplace, and how far are they allowed to go around employee conduct?
Yeah, you're absolutely, as an employer, allowed to have rules and set the rules, as long as they're not discriminatory or otherwise unlawful. So, if you're having rules about, what people could wear or not wear, it can't discriminate against a particular group or unlawfully impact a particular group. They have to be evenly applied and thoughtful, which means you should have a diverse group of people sitting and making these rules and reviewing them, and also having your lawyer review them. Right. That's on the strike list. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
So
our podcast may lose its government funding.
That'd be nice for that stuff. So my mom was a stickler for etiquette. Like literally, there was like a big book, Emily Post's book of etiquette in the house that she like read with me. And she was like a Southern lady who liked manners. And she always said, Etiquette and manners is for the comfort of others. It's if we all live by a certain code, then we are all comfortable in one another's presence. So there was a great article that you and I saw in New York Magazine last week by Carrie Batten that is all about like actually rules help us all get along in the office. You saw that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with it. And I totally agree with your mom. I believe, manners are important. By the way, I agree with my mom who said we shouldn't drink alcohol on this show. So I brought coffee in my lawyer mug.
Today's episode of Crossbar because we're recording at noon, but I am not promising when we normally record in our like kind of late on a Thursday or Friday. I'm really gonna go back to. I liked the cocktail. I thought it was cute.
Yeah. So sometimes you follow your parents' rules, sometimes you don't. But you should definitely follow your boss's rules, and bosses are allowed to have rules. And I would, going back to something you said earlier, I would definitely put no bare feet at the top of the list, whether it's an office or an airplane. Come on.
Oh, do you have a foot thing? Like when people take like barefoot on a plane?
It's not a foot thing. It's disgusting.
But how do you feel about flip-flops walking around city streets?
Not.
Like I definitely walk around in my Birks. I've definitely gone on the subway in Birkenstocks. Have you?
Those are not flip-flops.
Okay. Is that more acceptable?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Just checking. All right, what else?
I used to work in a shoe store, so I know. Okay.
You used to work in a shoe store?
Yes. Humble beginnings, Laura.
Yeah, I worked at the Army Navy store after school in high school because that was where the boys wanted to shop.
One could tell.
Cosmo girls.
Yeah, early start.
It's all about strategy. Okay, so the big beautiful bill is coming to the Senate this week. And although everybody from the president to the Speaker of the House says, no, we're not cutting Medicaid. We're not cutting any of these things. They totally are. Can you speak to this at all?
Well, I mean, you're really the political person, but
they are totally cutting Medicaid because people are going to be forced to. They are totally cutting Medicaid because of the raising of the requirements to receive it. Less people are going to receive Medicaid that need it. More children are going to fall through the cracks. And while I think everybody agrees that people should work whenever possible, certainly if they're getting assistance, we don't want kids to fall through the cracks. So how is this, do you think, going to play out this week? Do you think
there's always jockeying in these situations with reconciling these bills and getting budgets passed, which, there's a stated goal of getting this budget through by July 4th. I think that without getting into the specifics, because we don't know what they're going to be after the Senate, puts its layering on the House budget bill. For our audience, I think the important message is there's going to be cuts. There's going to be cuts in areas that impact your employees. And it's important to know what they are. And it's also important to know that we're seeing a shift right now in the government away from their responsibility for basic needs and services back onto corporate shoulders. And they're not saying it, but your employees will say it very loud and clear. So if you're not paying attention to this, you should be. If you're at a big company, of course, you have lobbyists and government affairs consultants who are going to inform you. But if you're at a smaller company where you just want to know on your own, you really need to pay close attention to what's happening here, because when essential services are cut by the government, the next place employees are going to look is to their company to fill those services.
Yeah, you're right about that. And layoffs seem to be looming ever larger. There was a big layoff from Business Insider last week. People worry about the role AI is just going to cause more layoffs. Scott Galloway said for a long time, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You'll lose it to somebody who knows how to do AI. People are losing their jobs to AI.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this on prior episodes, and certainly AI is going to replace some jobs, but it's also going to create other jobs. And if you're in a position where you can train and develop new skills, you should be developing AI-related skills.
If you're a journalist at Business Insider and you were part of this layoff, it's happening faster maybe than we realize, I guess.
Sure. And I can tell you from my own experience right now, I'm getting a lot of calls about layoffs and anticipated layoffs. And I think it's going to be a very ugly late summer and fall. It's coming. It's definitely coming. And the government uncertainty is a big part of it. I think is a part of it, but not the driving factor at this point. It's definitely not the driving factor at this point. I would say the bigger factor is what's happening with the government, what's happening with our economy, what's happening with trade or the lack of it. And those factors are definitely hurting corporate bottom line.
Certain industries, but I think certain industries are getting hit harder and faster and earlier by it. are
Absolutely.
related.
Absolutely. But I think what we're going to see and what I'm hearing about it has nothing to do with that.
Okay, the war on Harvard has continued. Commencement was last week. I have a client who advises families on college admissions, and her phone is ringing off the hook right now because people don't know what to do. I mean, she is more important than ever because she has people with inside information at all the elite schools, so they can guide those families to some extent, but nobody knows what's going on with Harvard. Will it have international students or not?
It's really sad, and I think this is a really targeted attack. In fact, there's been articles written over the past couple months stating that people in the administration, the Project 2025 people, really want to topple a big university, and Harvard's as big as it gets because they don't like elites. They think universities are elite breeding grounds. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I think we all know that by now, the way this is going and the cuts being so arbitrary. I think he just wants a head for his wall. He'll get Harvard, and then he'll probably move on to the next project.
I mean, Harvard is a globally revered institution of learning. How awful.
Yeah, of course, but no one could be bigger than the person who's going after Harvard. That's the way he views the world. And so he's got to cut down all these institutions. And I think they rejected his son or something, allegedly. But there it is, allegedly.
The one who's down to NYU, I keep expecting to see him.
But there is a lesson here for corporate executives in the whole Harvard saga, which is you need to be prepared if the government comes for your workplace. It's the same thing with the law firms. It's the same thing with the well, you need to create a crisis plan and a response plan. So get working with your lawyers and your crisis people.
Always. You're a lawyer and you're a comms person.
I mean, this administration has gotten to the point, the reporting hasn't been so explicit about it, but they're demanding a seat on corporate boards. And there was a use.
What corporate board did they demand a seat on?
The U.S. Steel transaction was approved with that condition. Richard Grinnell was appointed to the board of Live Nation. I mean, there are examples out there.
Who's Richard Grinnell?
Well, he's I think the interim president of the Kennedy Center and a close confidant of the president.
And now is on the board of
Live Nation. I mean, there's other examples out there. I mean, this is.
I'm the CEO of an airline. I'm very fancy. The CEO of an airline. And suddenly, like, what signs should I be looking for that they are coming into my business?
I mean, at this point, probably, public statements about your industry, inquiry from regulators who don't seem to be regulating anything else. But, these are things to be looking at. Pressure campaigns from conservative news outlets and influencers, the Loomers of the world and others. So there's little signs before it ends up at your doorstep. But if you're at the top of any industry, you should be ready.
How much should you be battening down the hatches, and how much should you be engaging with others in your industry?
Well, I think that's the key, is engaging with others in your industry. And Harvard's taking on this fight, but other universities are tightly knit in defending themselves against these attacks. In the law firm sector, we saw the 9 who went out on their own are just getting destroyed, and the rest all fought back and hung together, and that's worked.
I heard Paul Weiss reached out for help and nobody was interested.
I heard that. I don't necessarily believe it, but that's that. We've talked about that one ad nauseum, and we're seeing the after effects of their decision.
I have a funny word question for you. So I'm doing this event for one of my clients that is I'm doing this event for one of my clients. It's by invitation, but it's open. Like, I could forward it to you and you would be welcome because I forwarded it to you. And 50 seats, and she's sharing her expertise with a couple colleagues for families. A competitor, like a rival firm, RSVP'd yes to the event, like the head of a rival firm. And I need to email this woman and say, hi, this is for prospective families only. Or I need to email this woman and basically be like, you can't sit with us. You don't even go here. What is that? Anything I should be careful of in this email that I send?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. If they're not part of the intended audience, then you write them and say, sorry.
Have you heard of that before?
I have heard of that, actually. I deal a lot with non-competes and trade secrets and things like that. So certainly I've had different versions of that fact pattern. In the workplace, one thing I deal with commonly is clients who announce a resignation and they're going to a competitor, and then all of a sudden they get uninvited from a bunch of different events at their company or asked not to participate in panels that they've participated on, things like that. I think everybody understands it. I don't know why a competitor
with your real name to
right.
a competitor's event. So weird. Anyway, okay. We both watched Mountainhead. Before we get into the movie itself, I just want to point out that both Mountainhead and Mission Impossible were about the world ending because of deep fake videos. That is really interesting that both of these movies that came out within the span of like 3 weeks, big budget movies, this is what they think the end of the world will be. Did you catch that?
It's a very real scenario. I mean, we saw, similar thing happen, explosion of social media, the Arab Spring many years ago, and the unrest that led to. Certainly a very plausible scenario, and the reaction to it from the tech executives, also a very plausible scenario, which is very scary. As you told me last week, there aren't that many people using it. I don't know if I agree with that, but certainly,
There's not many people using it.
Was that your AI who told me that?
Right, let's ask it. I'm going to ask using Chat GPT. Let's ask it. Searching. 500 million weekly active users reflect in June 2025. Wow. Reflecting a 25% increase since February.
There you go.
The US is 19% of the global user base. Were you ready for the story to go quite as Animal Farm as it did?
I wasn't ready for it, but certainly I understand it. And I think if you're an executive right now, one of the takeaways you have to have from this movie and just generally is you need to. And I was also thinking about it in the context of a number of stories this week about the rise of podcasts and prominent podcasters and the attack on major media is you need to diversify your sources. You need to be aware of what's going on out there. You can't be so insular. And these tech executives resemble a number of executives I've worked with in the past who think they know everything and don't have people who are willing to tell them the truth and have this worldview that's very jaded and sometimes dangerous.
So just think this movie was a perfect example of why men are too emotional to run things. Women, if it was 4 women in this situation, things would not have gone quite so dark. They would have been like, okay, let's work together. What plans are we going to put in place? Let's make a plan. Let's make an operating system. That was not what these 4 men thought.
Yeah, well, became very primal.
I'm not, don't be like, oh, she's one of those feminists. No, proud feminist obviously loves men. Hello. So, thing of the week is going to be Elon Musk for leaving the government. You go, buddy. You go back and play with your little cars. I think that seems great for you. Cars and tinker around and get out of the government and leave it to the government.
I'm really surprised it took that long for his departure to come up with us. What do you think about the black eye? Where do you think that came from?
I'm just bummed it wasn't me. And, God bless whoever did it, whether it was his kid or someone else.
You really think it was his kid? Because I don't.
Who do you think it was?
Well, I'm not. That's all I'm saying.
One of the many baby mamas?
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, that would be hard for a little...
There are theories out there. There's also scratches, by the way.
Okay. I'm going to read some of that. All right. So that's my zero and hero. Mountainhead and Elon is a hero for leaving government. What are yours?
It's fine.
All right. So what are your heroes and zeros?
My zeros are people who are attacking judges. And I would say this has been happening for a while now.
Physically or in the courts or just like the federal government?
No, in the public dialogue, not physically attacking judges. Obviously, that would be very bad and illegal and terrible. But over the past few months, I've seen a lot of friends and others just fall into this trap of, oh, that's a Biden judge, that's an Obama judge, that's whatever. And now we see the president attacking judges that he himself appointed. And let's remember, judges serve a very important role in our society, in our government. No matter who they were appointed by, they work hard to be followers of and administrators of the law, and so this is ridiculous. I mean, sure. I also agree, by the way, the power of the Federalist Society over judicial appointments was not good. But at the same time, I don't think attacking judges is good in any shape or form. And I think people should stop it. And I think it's kind of embarrassing to be.
There were a lot of repro cases that got brought to the Fifth Circuit on purpose because of one judge who had made it his mission to end freedom of choice. What was Judge Kaczmarek? Is that his name?
Look, there are judges who have the opposite viewpoint. And that's why we have this system.
Most judges are doing their job. And there are some of the appointees on the Supreme Court that I was upset about that I've been more impressed with. Like Amy Coney Barrett comes through sometimes. But then there's some bad apples who like create this kind of concept of somebody's judge.
Yeah, look, I think it's not something that should be done. It's certainly not something that should be done by the president, but for all the commentators who really know nothing about the law and how it works, like, just stop it.
Okay.
You won't, but I'll say it.
Oh, and what's your hero? Vacation?
My heroes are executives who encourage their employees to use vacations. How about that? And as we enter the summer, be one of those heroes. It is important more than ever for employees to take a break. Those are hard.
My cat Annabelle is currently taking a nap, which I
Yeah, you encourage that, of course. But vacation is important. This like idolatry of people don't take vacation or don't take time off is stupid and outdated. Okay. It's important to take vacation. The demands on their time are greater than ever. The pressures on their lives are greater than ever. Let people take vacation.
All right. That's a wonderful note to end on.
There you go. So positive.
And I want to thank our amazing intern by the name of Sadie Rahbar. And she is helping us edit this episode. Have a great week.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you, Sadie.